The wind cut through my hoodie like knives as the taillights disappeared into the Mojave dark. "Are they coming back, Mummy?" my 6-year-old son whispered, barefoot and trembling. I couldn't answer. My parents had just thrown us out. No phone, no food, no water, just us and the desert. "Leeches need to crawl," my father had sneered, tossing our bag into the dirt. I wrapped my arms around Leo, shielding him from the cold and the truth. I wasn't sure we'd survive the night, but I knew this: I would never beg again. They abandoned me. But I'd rise from this. The night had started so quietly, with Leo asleep in the back seat and the hum of the highway beneath us. I stared out the window, trying to stay calm, even as my mother's voice began rising from a simmer to a boil. "It's not alone, Tessa. It's family helping family," she hissed, arms folded so tightly it looked like she might implode. I kept my eyes forward. "It's Mason's," I caught myself. "Leo's support money. It's for him, not for your overdue credit card bill." My father slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "Ungrateful. After all we've done for you. All you've done is remind me what a burden I am." I shot back instantly, regretting my tone, but not the truth behind it. They hadn't wanted me to keep Leo. I remembered the words. "No man wants a girl with baggage. You'll ruin your life." But Leo had saved my life in ways they'd never understand. "You owe us," my mother snapped. "We housed you for years. You kicked me out the day I told you I was pregnant," I whispered, and then pretended I'd run away. My father's knuckles were white around the wheel. "That's it." The car jerked to the right, gravel crunching beneath the tires. Leo stirred in the back seat. I twisted around. "Shh, baby, it's okay," I whispered, heart pounding. We pulled to a sharp stop. Dust swirled in the headlights. My dad got out without a word, opened the trunk, and yanked out my duffel bag. He tossed it onto the dirt like it weighed nothing. My mouth went dry. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping out into the cold. He didn't answer, just opened the back door, leaned in, and unbuckled Leo. My son blinked, disoriented, his cheek creased from sleep. "Dad, stop." I rushed forward, but my mother had already exited the car. She didn't say a word, just stood with her arms crossed, lips pursed, as if she were watching a movie she hated, but couldn't walk out of. My father set Leo on the ground beside the bag and climbed back into the driver's seat. "Leeches like you need to crawl," he muttered before slamming the door shut. The engine roared. I stepped into the headlights, waving my arms. "Please don't! He doesn't have shoes!" They didn't even look back. The red taillights faded into the darkness, swallowed by the desert highway. Leo whimpered, clinging to my leg. "Mommy," I couldn't breathe, couldn't cry. I was frozen, not from the night air, but from the sheer disbelief. This wasn't happening. They weren't really leaving. They'd turn around. But they didn't. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Leo's voice broke it. "Are they mad at me?" I knelt down and wrapped him in my arms. "No, baby. Never. They don't know how to love right." His small fingers clutched at my hoodie. My feet hurt. I looked down. He was barefoot, standing on loose gravel. The bag. I lunged for it, tearing open the zipper. A half-eaten granola bar, a sweatshirt, a pair of my old ballet flats. They were 3 sizes too big, but they'd have to do. I slipped them onto his tiny feet. He didn't complain, just looked at me with wide, trusting eyes. "It's cold." "I know," I whispered, wrapping him in my sweater. "We'll figure this out." We sat beside the road, the duffel bag between us. I held Leo close my back against the wind, shielding him from the cold that bit through our clothes. I kept staring into the blackness, waiting for headlights that never came. As I rocked Leo gently against my chest, I tried not to let the rage or fear surface. But the desert didn't care about my composure. It crept into my bones with every gust of wind. I rubbed his back and muttered stories about pirate ships and treasure islands, anything to distract him from the gnawing cold. A glint on the ground caught my eye. I reached toward the gravel and pulled out a small rectangular object. My mother's phone. It must have slipped from her lap when she got out. I unlocked it out of habit. It wasn't password protected. That alone was odd. She guarded it like a vault. Curiosity overcame fatigue. I opened the camera roll. My stomach turned. There I was, kneeling, begging, shielding Leo, with my arms frozen in a still frame that made me look desperate feral. Then I noticed the timestamp. The video had started the moment my father pulled off the road. She'd been filming me from the moment the fight escalated. I opened her text messages. The last one was sent to my aunt 3 hours ago. She's gonna pull the single mum card again. Wait till you see this. Total drama queen. I nearly dropped the phone. This wasn't just abandonment. This was calculated humiliation. They hadn't acted in rage. They had planned to leave me here, then make it look like I'd had a meltdown and stormed off. They wanted the family to see me broken. They wanted a story they could control, a video to show at barbecues and holiday dinners. Tessa the leech, starring in her own disgrace. Leo stirred in my lap. "Mommy, I'm hungry." I blinked the tears away. "I know, sweetheart." I dug into the duffel bag. Granola bar, stale but edible. I broke it in half, giving the bigger piece to him. He munched slowly, his eyelids drooping. But then he shifted, whimpering. "My foot hurts." I checked his heel was red raw against the back of my ballet flat. I pulled the shoe off gently. A blister had already formed, angry and wet. I felt useless. I tore a strip from the inside of my hoodie's lining and wrapped his foot gently. Better. He nodded, curling into me. I looked at the phone again, thumb hovering over the delete button. Then I hesitated. No, I'd need this later. Proof, truth. I slipped it into the duffel bag. The stars above blurred from the heat of my tears. I wasn't just cold or scared, I was betrayed. Deeply, deliberately betrayed. And they had smiled through it. They'd said it was for my own good. That I needed to learn how the world works. That I was too soft. Soft, I'd raised a child alone since 19. Worked 3 jobs, survived postpartum depression, endured their mockery, their judgment, their silent dinners where I wasn't welcome, but my son's presence was tolerated for show. They didn't want me strong. They wanted me grateful for crumbs. Leo shifted again. "Will we go home tomorrow?" "We are home," I said, brushing his hair back. "Wherever we are together, that's home now." He smiled weakly, his eyes fluttering shut. The wind howled. I held him tighter. My hoodie barely covered his knees. I started humming a lullaby my grandmother used to sing when I was small. The irony tasted bitter. They thought they'd left me in ruins, but I wasn't destroyed. Not yet, not ever. I closed my eyes, not to sleep, but to imagine. A future not defined by the people who abandoned me, but by the one person I refused to abandon, my son. I didn't sleep that night. I sat curled around Leo like a shell around a pearl, my back aching from the gravel, my body numb from the cold. The desert was so still, so vast, it felt like we dropped off the edge of the world. Each gust of wind sounded like a whisper of things I'd tried to forget. Pregnant at 19, that had been the start. I remembered the exact moment I told my parents. My mother dropped the salad tongs mid-toss. My father stared at me like I'd announced I was dying. "Who's he?" asked, voice hollow. When I said the father wasn't around anymore, he just stood and left the room. They didn't shout. That would have been easier. Instead, they iced me out silent dinners, no eye contact, a note on my door saying I had 30 days to move out, not because they couldn't support me, but because they wouldn't. "You made your bed," my mum said once. "Lie in it." I did. I lay in it every night alone, hungry, terrified. But I didn't give up. I found work, took online classes, figured out how to be both mum and dad for Leo. And yet, I still tried to earn their love. Every holiday, every family gathering, I showed up with a smile and a gift, and a perfect photo of Leo, hoping this would be the moment they saw me, not the mistake, not the failure, just me. They never did. And Leo, he wasn't just a reminder of their disappointment, he was the scapegoat. "That boy's wild," my dad would mutter when Leo laughed too loudly. "Doesn't know how to act." My mum once told me she wouldn't watch him while I worked because she wasn't a babysitter. She was his grandmother. but only in name. I held Leo tighter. The stars began to fade, melting into a pale, bruised sky. My lips were dry, cracked. I'd stopped expecting headlights, just the silence of a road that had forgotten us. Leo stirred his breath, warm against my collarbone. "It's still dark," he murmured. "Almost morning," I whispered. My stomach growled. I'd given him the only food we had, and my body punished me for it. But I felt no regret. He blinked slowly, then looked up. "Did you dream?" I shook my head. "Just remembered." He nodded, as if he understood, even if he didn't. He always did. That offered a kind of small grace that adults forget how to give. "Will we go to school today?" he asked, innocent. I laughed softly, the sound bitter in the stillness. "Not today." We sat in silence. The chill began to lift slightly, traded for the dry heat that promised to rise with the sun. My hands trembled not from fear anymore, but fatigue, pure grinding exhaustion. Another hour passed, no cars. I thought about standing, walking, but to where the last exit had been at least 40 minutes behind. I could carry Leo maybe a mile before my legs gave out, and there was no guarantee we'd find anything but more sand and highway. Still, I couldn't let him see me break. "We'll wait until the sun's higher," I told him. "Maybe someone will see us. Maybe a police car," he said hopefully. Maybe I echoed. He leaned into me again. "I love you, Mummy." And in that moment, surrounded by nothing but desert and dust, I realized something simple and gutting. He was the only person who had ever told me that and meant it without condition. No judgment, no strings, just love. That was enough to hold on. I wiped my eyes and kissed the top of his head. "I love you more." The sun was climbing when I heard it, the low rumble of an engine in the distance. At first I thought I was imagining it, another hallucination born of dehydration and fatigue. But Leo's head perked up too, and we both turned toward the curve of the road. A truck, big, old, faded green with patches of rust, and a clunky sound like it had stories to tell. It slowed as it approached tires crunching against gravel. I stood shielding my eyes. Leo clung to my leg. The truck pulled over, hissing softly as the brakes engaged. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a woman with sun-leathered skin, wiry grey hair tucked under a baseball cap, and the tired eyes of someone who's seen more than she wanted to. "You two okay?" she called out, voice rough but not unkind. I nodded too fast. "Our car broke down," I lied instinctively, glancing at Leo. No way I'd admit the truth, not yet. She looked at me for a long second. Not the casual glance of a stranger passing by, but a scan, a search. Her gaze lingered on my cracked lips, Leo's blistered foot wrapped in fabric, the dirt on our clothes. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She leaned over and popped the passenger door open. "Get in." I don't ask twice. I hesitated. She saw it. "I'm not going to hurt you," she added. "But I've been the one on the side of the road before. I don't leave people behind." That did it. I lifted Leo into the truck and climbed in after him. The seat was cracked vinyl and smelled like lemon balm and motor oil. A strange comfort. She handed me a half-full water bottle from the center console. "Drink slow." "Thank you," I whispered, sipping carefully before passing it to Leo. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I tried not to cry from the relief. "You got a name?" she asked, eyes still on the road. "Tessa." "This is my son Leo." She nodded. "I'm Martha." Another pause. "You're from around here?" I hesitated. Sort of. "My parents live about an hour north. We were visiting." Her lips tightened. "Carver." I froze. She glanced at me. "Your mum's name is June Carver." I nodded slowly, heart pounding. "You know her?" She let out a low whistle and shook her head. Didn't expect that name to crawl back into my life. I stared, stunned. You knew my mother, knew her real well. We went to school together, same church, same softball team. There was something sour in her tone. She pulled the truck off the main road and onto a dusty path leading to a small building in the distance, a garage maybe with a trailer beside it. She ever mention me? I shook my head. No, never, she wouldn't. Martha pulled up beside the garage and killed the engine. Your mother doesn't remember people she stepped on, only those who clapped when she won. I didn't know what to say. Martha turned to face me. She was cruel, polished on the outside but vindictive underneath. You remind me of her a little, but only in the eyes. I stiffened. Don't get prickly, she said. You've got the fire. That's not a bad thing. Leo had fallen asleep again, curled on the seat with his head in my lap. Martha watched him. Cute kid. Looks like he's been through hell. I nodded. They left us, I whispered. Just dumped us in the desert. She wasn't surprised, not even a blink. I believe it, she said simply. That woman always had a mean streak. You knew she could do something like this. I knew she was capable, Martha said. Didn't think she'd do it to her own blood. But then again, June Carver never saw family as anything but a mirror. If she didn't like the reflection, she smashed it. I swallowed hard heat burning behind my eyes. Martha looked at me carefully. I'm not going to ask you what happened. But you and your boy can stay in the trailer for now. There's food, clean clothes. I'll call my cousin at the diner, see if she can hook you up with a few shifts. Why are you helping us? I asked, voice cracking. She tilted her head. Because I needed someone once and nobody came. I figured, maybe it's my turn to stop that cycle. Then she stood, opened the door and said, You coming in, or you planning to build a life in my truck? The trailer smelled like cedar and laundry detergent. Clean, warm, real. Leo collapsed on the small cot in the corner without a word, snuggling into the faded quilt like it was heaven. I sat on the edge, my body still buzzing with distrust. This couldn't be real. I had been taught that nothing came without a price, especially kindness. Martha moved around us like a quiet storm. She didn't hover or ask questions. She just handed me a towel, pointed to the tiny shower stall and said, You'll feel more human after a wash. She was right. The hot water stung at first, tracing the grime and salt on my skin. I scrubbed until my fingers ached. When I stepped out, there were clean clothes folded neatly on the bathroom sink, soft sweatpants, a cotton shirt, even socks. Nothing fancy, but they felt like silk. Leo was still asleep when I returned, his foot propped up with a pillow. I noticed Martha had left a tray beside him, toast with honey and a cup of warm milk. He hadn't touched it yet. I moved slowly, still waiting for the catch. For the moment, Martha would ask for rent or favours, or reveal this was temporary, that it was pity. But she didn't. Instead, she knocked once on the door and peeked in. There's soup if you're hungry. I nodded. Thank you. She didn't reply, just left me to decide if I trusted the offer. Later I found her in the garage, sleeves, rolled up engine grease smeared on her forearm. She was elbow deep in the hood of an old pickup. You used to work on cars, she asked without looking up. No, I said. I worked retail, then food service. Whatever paid. She nodded. You got hands that have done hard things. That's enough. I watched her for a moment. There was something calming about the way she worked. No wasted movements, no fuss. Just focused effort. I don't understand, I said finally. Why are you helping us? She didn't look at me. Just wiped a rag over her wrench and said, I told you, nobody helped me. Doesn't mean I have to do the same. But you don't even know me. She paused, then glanced at me. I know broken when I see it. Doesn't mean it can't be fixed. That night, I sat on the small couch in the trailer, watching Leo sleep, his chest rising and falling steadily. The colour had returned to his cheeks. He laughed in his sleep, something I hadn't heard in weeks. The tightness in my chest eased slightly. Maybe this wasn't a trap. Maybe this was a pause, a breath, after a long run uphill. The next morning I woke to the smell of bacon and coffee. Martha was in the kitchen area humming some old country tune. She slid a plate toward me. Eat. Then come to the garage. I'll show you how to change oil. I blinked. Seriously? She shrugged. Can't have you moping around here like a ghost. Besides knowing how to take care of yourself is power. And you look like someone who needs a little power back. I took the plate. The bacon was crisp, the eggs fluffy. I hadn't tasted food like that in months. Leo bounced in later, still limping slightly but grinning. He wore one of Martha's old flannel shirts, like a cape. Look, Mommy, I'm a mechanic superhero. I laughed a real laugh, not forced, not filtered through exhaustion or fear, just joy. Martha looked over and smiled faintly. Told you, broken doesn't mean finished. And in that garage, surrounded by rusted tools and the hum of old engines, something shifted inside me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning slowly, quietly, to believe I might live again. By the end of the week, I knew how to rotate tyres, check oil levels, and tell the difference between a timing belt and a serpentine one. My hands were constantly stained, and my fingernails had surrendered to grease, but it felt good. Tangible, real. There was something sacred about fixing things that were broken, especially when no one thought they could be fixed. Martha didn't hover. She'd show me once, maybe twice, then step back and let me struggle. When I got it wrong, she'd grunt, hand me another wrench and say, again. It wasn't praise or sympathy, but it was belief, the quiet kind. Leo followed me around the shop like a shadow dragging a toolbox behind him and wearing earmuffs 3 sizes too big. He painted a cardboard sign that said Rayner's Repair Crew and taped it to the side of the trailer. I didn't have the heart to correct him. One afternoon, while he napped in the trailer, I found Martha sitting behind the garage at a beat-up picnic table. She was drinking coffee, staring into the distance. I sat beside her, wiping sweat from my forehead. You always live out here. Ever since the divorce, she replied. Got tired of waiting for someone to come home and be kind. I nodded. Silence settled between us, not uncomfortable but full of unspoken knowing. Then she said it so simply I almost missed it. I had a daughter. I turned. She was 17 when I last saw her. Smart, stubborn, too much like me. Martha's eyes didn't meet mine. My parents hated her, thought she was fast and disrespectful. She came home pregnant one night. I tried to protect her, but she swallowed hard. They kicked her out when I was on a work trip. I didn't find her until weeks later. My throat tightened. Where was she, hospital? Her voice cracked. She didn't make it. The silence this time wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, sharp. I reached for her hand without thinking. She let me. I'm sorry, I whispered. She would have been your age now, Martha said. I think about that sometimes, what she'd be like, whether she'd have a kid like Leo, whether I'd get to hold them. We sat like that for a long time. It was then I realized this wasn't just kindness. This wasn't random. I wasn't the first girl left behind. I wasn't the first daughter to be exiled. Martha wasn't just helping me. She was trying to rewrite an ending that had broken her heart. Thank you for not turning away, I said quietly. I don't think I would have made it out there. She grunted. You would have. You've got fire. Just needed a little shelter to let it burn steady. I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't just a mechanic, she was a survivor too. A warrior who'd lost a battle but still built a refuge for the wounded. In the days that followed, something shifted in me. I started waking up before the alarm. I cooked breakfast instead of waiting for Martha. I cleaned the trailer, organised tools, even helped patch a leaking pipe behind the garage. Martha noticed. You trying to take my job, she teased one morning. Just earning my keep, I replied. She tossed me a donut. You're part of the crew now, Rayner. That's payment enough. And somehow that mattered more than any paycheck. At night, Leo would climb into my lap, still in his flannel cape, and tell me about the imaginary customers he helped fix cars for. He'd whisper that he wanted to be a fixing hero when he grew up. One night as he fell asleep, he murmured, "I like it here. Feels like Grandma's house." I didn't correct him. I just kissed his forehead and whispered, "Yeah, baby, it kind of does." The first time I signed my new name, it felt strange, like trying on someone else's clothes. Tessa Rayner, not Carver, not her daughter, not the girl who once begged to be seen, to be kept. Just me, free, raw, and entirely unclaimed. I sat across from the county clerk, Leo, beside me, swinging his feet under the chair. The woman behind the desk glanced at the forms, then at me. "You understand, this change is permanent." I nodded. "That's the point." Rayner Leo said proudly, testing the name like a new toy. "We match now." My throat tightened. "Yeah, baby, we match." The paperwork was signed and stamped. Martha had come as my witness, grunting something about better names, better futures, as she handed over her ID. She didn't need to say more. After that, I moved fast. Deleted old social accounts, cancelled my phone line, got a prepaid number untraceable and silent. I created a new email, got a PO box in town. Every breadcrumb linking me back to the Carver name, I swept it clean. It wasn't spite, it was survival, because I knew them. My parents didn't chase out of love. They chased to control. They'd twist the story, paint me unstable, lost, selfish. I could hear my mother's voice already. She's always been dramatic. She just wants attention. No, I wanted distance, clean lines, legal walls. The day the new Social Security card arrived, I stared at it for a long time. It felt absurd that freedom could be so small, so flat, just laminated plastic with my new name printed on it. But it meant I could breathe again. "You gonna frame that?" Martha asked, passing by the trailer kitchen. Maybe I smiled. "Feels like my first real ID. You earned it." That afternoon, Martha handed me a wrench and said, "Customers late. Want to practice changing a battery?" I rolled up my sleeves. Absolutely. The garage wasn't glamorous, cracked floors, squeaky lifts, radio always 2 seconds out of tune, but it became a kind of temple. I learned how to use my body again, how to trust my instincts, how to fix what was broken without apologizing for the cracks. By week 3, I was helping Martha with real clients. She'd grunt in approval when I handled something without needing to be told twice. She even let me handle the cash register one day. "Don't screw it up," she said, and no flirting with the parts delivery guy. I laughed harder than I had in months. Leo adjusted too. He helped stack towels in the trailer, fed the stray cat that hung around the back door, even convinced Martha to let him supervise air filter changes. His limp faded, his laughter returned. He asked fewer questions about my parents. At night, I picked up extra shifts at the local diner. Martha's cousin Jolene ran the place and always needed hands. I wiped tables, poured coffee, and tried not to take it personally when men called me sweetheart, like it was my job title. Tips weren't great, but they were enough. I opened a savings account under my new name, got a notebook and scribbled goals, real goals, save up for a car, get Leo into a better school. Maybe finish the online degree I'd started before everything fell apart. Every check, every clean dish, every bolt tightened at the garage. It wasn't just income. It was ownership of my life, of my name, of the story I would finally get to write without someone else's pen. One night, as Leo snored softly on the couch, I sat at the tiny trailer table and wrote something I hadn't dared to in years, a short essay. I didn't know where it would go or who'd read it. But the words came fast, poured out like water from a dam that had cracked. It was about starting over, about cutting ties, about finding breath in the silence of being forgotten. When I finished, I read it aloud once, then tucked it into the notebook. The next morning I handed it to Martha with trembling fingers. She read it while sipping her coffee, then handed it back. "You've got something, Rayner." I blinked. "Like writing." She shrugged. "Like survival with rhythm. Don't waste it. The legal side came next. I knew changing my name wasn't enough. My parents would find loopholes if they wanted to reach through bureaucratic cracks to remind me I still belonged to them on paper. I needed something stronger, something that said, with legal clarity, I am no longer yours. Martha recommended a lawyer named Vincent Hale. Small office tucked between a pawn shop and a dry cleaner downtown. She said he didn't smile much but got things done. When I walked in with Leo holding my hand and a folder full of documents, I didn't expect to recognize him, but I did. Vincent looked up from his desk, squinted behind thick glasses, and the moment stretched. Recognition flickered in his eyes. Tessa Carver, he said slowly, or not anymore, I guess. My stomach turned. You worked with my father, once he said dryly, a long time ago. I hesitated. He told me you handled the trust fund paperwork when I was a teen, and the property transfer to his name. You signed off on it. Vincent nodded. I did. Then he stiffed me on the final retainer and told his golf buddies I was a hack with a license. I blinked. He smiled thinly. Let's just say I don't take Carver family referrals anymore. That was the twist I didn't expect a man my father had once used, now ready to help me erase him. Vincent took my folder and flipped through the pages, name change confirmations, Leo's revised birth certificate, proof of residence, income stubs from the garage and the diner. What exactly do you want, Tessa? I want to sever everything I said. No inheritance, no claim, no name. I don't want anything they could twist into a tether. His gaze sharpened. You're sure, I'm sure. He leaned back. All right, here's what we'll do. I'll draft a statement of disavowal, formal, notarized. You'll renounce any claim to the Carver estate and declare separation from the family in perpetuity. It's extreme but legally clean. Perfect, I whispered. He tapped the pen against the desk. You'll need a witness, preferably someone outside your current residence, Martha's cousin Jolene. She'll do. Vincent handed me the pen. This will burn bridges you can't rebuild. They already left me in the fire, I said. I'm just walking out the other side. We finalized everything in under a week. Jolene signed as witness, eyebrows raised but silent. I held Leo's hand as we stood in the notary's office, the document heavy in my hands. Vincent handed me a copy in a stiff envelope. You'll want to keep this safe. You are from this point forward no longer legally tied to the Carver family. No inheritance rights, no next of kin obligations, no estate responsibilities. You've officially erased yourself from their legal world. I exhaled. Good. Back at the trailer, I laid the papers out on the table. Leo was drawing beside me another superhero sketch with a wrench in hand. I slid the envelope into a metal box where I'd kept our essentials, birth certificates, name change records, and now this, our freedom manifesto. I took a blank sheet of paper and began writing. Not for court, not for any official channel, just a letter. Short, sharp. To the Carver family, I wrote, I don't forgive you. Not because I want to punish you, but because forgiveness implies you meant well. You didn't. You calculated. You abandoned. You watched me suffer and called it teaching. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not even sad. I'm done. I won't carry your name, your guilt, or your expectations. I was born into your house, but I refuse to die in its shadow. I'm not sorry I existed. But I am finally erasing the part that belonged to you. I didn't sign it with love, just Tessa Rayner. Then I sealed it and placed it on top of the legal documents. A full severance, a declaration, not vengeance, not revenge, just release. That night, I read the letter aloud to Leo while he coloured. He looked up and said, So we're not part of them anymore. No, baby, I said, brushing his hair back. We're our own family now. It started with a crayon. I'd been sweeping behind the garage when Martha called me inside, her voice sharp. Tessa, you better see this. Leo was sitting cross-legged on the couch, head bowed. His cheeks were red. In front of him was an envelope wrinkled and creased with uneven handwriting scrawled across the front, Grandma and Grandpa. I froze. Martha glanced at me but said nothing. She turned and left us in silence. I walked over slowly. "Leo," I said gently, "what's that?" He looked up with wide, nervous eyes. I just wanted to say something nice. I knelt in front of him. "To who?" He pointed at the envelope. "To your mum and dad." My breath caught. I picked up the envelope and opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a letter written in thick crayon, blue and green scribbles filling the page. There were misspelled words, backward letters, and a drawing of 3 people holding hands, one figure, clearly me, the other him, and the third labelled Grandma. "Dear Grandma and Grandpa," it read, "I love Mommy. She is nice and makes pancakes and fixes cars. You were mean to her. But if you say sorry, maybe we can see you again. Love, Leo." A single tear dropped onto the page before I realized I was crying. Leo tugged at my sleeve. "They were your mummy and daddy. Maybe they forgot how to be nice." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because what do you say to a child who believes kindness can fix cruelty? I wanted to scream. I wanted to tear the letter into pieces and throw it into the fire, but instead I folded it carefully and placed it on the table. Leo watched me. "You're not mad?" I forced a smile. "No, baby, I'm not mad." And I wasn't. I was heartbroken. Because in his world, apologies made things better. He didn't understand that some wounds weren't bruises, but absences holes where love should have been but never was. He didn't know that some people didn't forget how to love. They just never learned. Later that night, when he was asleep, I held the letter in my hands for a long time. The drawing of the 3 of us felt like a wish, scribbled in hope, one that I couldn't grant. I stepped outside into the night, the desert wind brushing against my face. I could have thrown the letter into the trash or let it fly into the dark like ash. But I didn't, because Leo had written it not from weakness, but belief. And belief was something I didn't want to extinguish in him. I tucked the letter into the metal box with the rest of our papers. Not because I planned to send it, but because it was part of our story now. A reminder that even when people destroy us, the heart finds its way to build again. The next morning, Leo padded into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Did you send it?" "No," I said, "but I saved it." He frowned. "Why?" "Because one day," I whispered, "I want you to remember who you were. The boy who believed people could be better." He smiled, small and sleepy. "Do you think they'll say, 'Sorry'?" I crouched down and pulled him into a hug. "I don't know. But you did something kind, and that matters more." He hugged me tightly, and I felt the quiet strength of his little arms wrap around me like armor. Later, while he drew superheroes and dragons, I stared at the envelope again. My name, my old name, was nowhere on it, just Grandma and Grandpa. Even he knew I wasn't their daughter anymore. And yet he still offered them a bridge. Not because they deserved it, but because his heart didn't know how to close doors. That letter didn't change them. It didn't reach them, but it changed me. I stood behind the garage that night, the letter clutched in my hand, a lighter in the other. The wind whispered through the trees, dry and restless. All I had to do was strike the flame and hold it to the paper. Let the words curl into ash. Let that chapter die. But I couldn't. My thumb hovered over the wheel of the lighter. The envelope trembled slightly in the breeze, the crayon hearts, the crooked letters, the small hope in Leo's words. They weren't mine to erase, because the letter didn't belong to the past. It belonged to the boy who still believed in a future. I exhaled sharply and slid the envelope back into my coat pocket. Inside, Martha was sipping tea, flipping through a worn repair manual. She looked up when I entered, took one glance at my face and said, "Didn't burn it, huh?" I shook my head. She didn't press. "I'm going to deliver it," I said quietly. Martha didn't flinch. "To them, I want them to see it," I replied, "not to make them feel guilty. Not to open doors, I just want them to see what they lost." She set down the cup. "They won't change, Tessa. I know. Then why go?" I looked down at the worn tile beneath my boots. "Because I need to end this right. Not with silence, not with running, but with truth." She nodded slowly. Closure. That's what you're chasing. More like confirmation, I murmured. That I did the right thing. Martha leaned back. Then go. But don't expect anything. Don't hope for a crack in their walls. Just drop the stone and walk away. I nodded. I will. But before I went, I wanted everything to be airtight. I wanted to walk into that house not as a lost daughter, but as someone they no longer had power over, legally, emotionally, completely. So I began to build a file. A file not of revenge but of release. It started with the name change documentation already signed and sealed. Then Leo's updated birth certificate, which now listed no father's name and bore the surname Rayner. I added the notarized declaration of disinheritance Vincent had drawn up, financial records, new addresses, emergency contacts, proof of residency in a different county. A letter from Jolene signed and dated stating I was under her employment. Each paper was a brick in a wall I'd built between us. Each page a statement. You don't own me. Not anymore. On the final page I wrote my own words. Not for a judge, not for a notary, just for them. You severed the bond long before I ever changed my name. You made a choice, and so have I. This file isn't revenge, it's a record, a mirror, a testament to what happens when cruelty meets resolve. I am not your burden, I am not your shame. I am the result of your absence and the architect of my future. I slid Leo's letter on top, sealing it all in a simple manila folder. Martha watched from the porch as I packed it into my bag. You sure you're ready for this? She asked. More than I've ever been. She didn't smile, just stood and placed a hand on my shoulder. Whatever happens, don't let them shake what you've built. You're not theirs. You're yours now. The next morning, Leo was invited to a sleepover with one of the local kids. Martha had arranged it days before. He hugged me goodbye, oblivious to the weight I was about to carry. Are you going to write more stories while I'm gone? He asked. I kissed his cheek. Maybe just finish one. He grinned. Make it a good one. I promised I would. And with that, I got in Martha's truck and began the drive back. Back to where it started. Back to the house where I'd once learnt to walk and later learned how it felt to be shoved aside. But this time I wasn't coming to beg. I was coming to close the book. The street hadn't changed. Same manicured lawns, same white fences, same hollow quiet. Even the mailbox still had the Carver name stenciled in fake gold letters, peeling at the edges, just like the people inside. I parked 2 houses down, killed the engine, and sat for a moment with my hands gripping the steering wheel. My heart beat steady, not from fear, but anticipation. This wasn't a reunion. It was an audit. I walked slowly toward the house, the manila folder tucked tightly under my arm. The porch still had that ridiculous family is everything plaque by the door, the same ceramic angel on the windowsill. Nothing ever changed here except me. I rang the bell, footsteps, then the door opened, and there she was, my mother. She blinked twice like she wasn't sure I was real, then her mouth parted slightly. Tessa. I didn't answer. My father's voice rang out from inside. Who is it? He appeared beside her a second later, still holding a bag of chips like we were about to watch a football game. His eyes landed on me and his lips curled. Well, well. She came crawling. I tilted my head. I didn't come to crawl. He laughed. Still dramatic. Must be exhausting. My mother stepped forward, arms crossed. Where's Leo safe? I said. Where he'll stay. Is this about money? My dad said, raising a brow. Because if you think you're getting back into the will. I held up the folder. What's that? He sneered. A list of complaints. No, I said calmly. It's a record of release. He snorted. You really think showing up with a stack of papers makes you powerful? No, I replied. I think surviving you did. He opened his mouth to retort, but I cut him off. You left us in the desert. You threw out your own daughter and grandson like trash, and then you told the family I had a breakdown. You filmed me begging, hoping to shame me, but I didn't break. I rebuilt. My mother's jaw tightened. You always twist things. You always make us the villains. You made yourselves that I said. I just stopped protecting the lie. I reached into the folder and pulled out Leo's letter. This is from Leo. He wrote it with hope you don't deserve. She reached for it instinctively. I pulled it back. No. You don't get to hold it. You just get to know it exists, that a little boy you threw away still had more heart than either of you ever showed. My father rolled his eyes. You survived, didn't you? So what's the big deal? We knew you'd be fine. That hit me harder than I expected. Not because it was true, but because it was the clearest proof they'd never cared at all. You think survival excuses cruelty, I asked. You think pain doesn't count if it leaves no visible scar? He shrugged. You're still standing. Yes, I said. And I'm standing here to make sure you understand what that means. I placed the folder on the doorstep. Inside were the legal documents, the name changes, the disinheritance, the notarized letter of severance, a copy of Leo's new birth certificate, and on top a single photo, Leo holding a cupcake at his last birthday, beaming beside Martha. You missed it, I said, not because you didn't know, but because you never cared. My mother opened her mouth, closed it. Her fingers twitched at her sides. I turned to leave. You think you're better than us now? My dad called out. I paused on the steps, then turned back one last time. No, I said, I'm not better. I'm just free. And then I walked away, not with rage, not with tears, but with peace. Because for the first time I wasn't trying to be heard. I was simply done speaking. My father laughed again as I turned to walk away, but the sound felt smaller now, like the last bark of a chained dog. My steps were steady. My heart wasn't racing. Every cell in my body had longed for this confrontation, but now that it was here, I didn't feel vindicated. I felt released. Wait, my mother's voice called out thin and cracked. I paused but didn't turn. She stepped out onto the porch, glancing at the folder I'd left on the top step. Her hand hovered over it, then withdrew like it might bite. What is this supposed to do? She asked quietly. Make us feel bad. I looked over my shoulder. No, that's not the point. Then what is the point? She snapped, voice trembling. To humiliate us, I stepped closer, took out Leo's letter again, not to hand it over, but to hold it where she could see. This, I said, is what you gave up. A child who still believed in you. A boy who thought maybe, just maybe, you'd want to say sorry. Her lips trembled. She stared at the drawing 3 stick figures, one with a cape, all inside a heart. A single tear fell from her eye. For a moment, hope flickered. But then I saw it, the quick swipe of her sleeve, the way her eyes darted toward the neighbour's yard. She wasn't crying because of Leo. She was crying because someone might find out. You're not sorry for what you did, I said flatly. You're scared people will know. She didn't deny it. She just looked away. My father folded his arms. Drama. Always drama. I pulled the rest of the documents from my bag and laid them neatly across the step like cards at a showdown. Name change, disinheritance, legal renunciation, a copy of the will I had signed to remove myself from any future claims to their estate, everything notarized, witnessed, and sealed. This, I said clearly, is not a performance. It's a declaration. My mother blinked. You can't just erase us. I looked at her. You erased me the moment you left me in the desert. I'm just signing the dotted line. My father scoffed. You think this makes you strong? No, I replied. I think surviving you made me strong. This makes me free. They didn't move, didn't speak. I didn't expect them to. The silence felt like the final page of a long, terrible chapter. I stood tall. I didn't come here to fight. I didn't come to cry, and I'm not here to punish you. I came to make sure that what you did doesn't get rewritten. I came to tell the truth, and then I'm leaving. I slid Leo's letter back into my coat and turned around. This time, I didn't wait for another word. I walked down the steps across the lawn and toward the street. My boots crunched the same gravel where I used to ride my bike. I passed the same flower bed my mum used to trim obsessively the same driveway where my father taught me how to parallel park, yelling the whole time. But none of it felt like mine anymore. I got in the truck, closed the door, and stared at the house through the windshield. I wasn't crying, I wasn't trembling, I wasn't second-guessing, I was done. Martha had told me closure isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's just silence after a final word. And I had spoken mine. As I pulled away, I didn't look back, not once, not even in the rearview mirror. Because some things deserve no memorial, some people deserve no monument. And some endings aren't tragedies, they're rebirths. 2 years later, I stood in front of a room full of folding chairs and hopeful eyes. The community centre wasn't fancy linoleum floors, buzzing lights, coffee that tasted like cardboard, but the energy was electric. These women weren't just attendees, they were warriors in the making. Single mothers, many freshly scarred, all trying to breathe again. My name tag read, Tessa, speaker. Just below it, someone had scribbled in pen survivor, storyteller, spark. I smiled as I adjusted the mic. I'm not here to tell you how to fix your life, I began. I'm here to tell you how I fixed mine. A few heads tilted up. Someone in the back uncrossed her arms. I used to believe survival was enough. That waking up, feeding my kid, showing up to work, that was the victory. But survival without freedom is just a prettier cage. A murmur of agreement spread through the room. I told them about Leo, about the desert, about the pain. I didn't dress it up. I didn't sanitize it. I let it bleed honestly. But then I told them about Martha, about the garage, about the name change, the papers, the decision to walk away, not in shame but in strength. I watched as their eyes changed, not with pity but recognition. We all carried different versions of the same story. At the end, during the Q&A, someone asked, "How do you know you're finally free?" I paused, then said, "When the people who once held power over you no longer live in your head, rent-free." Laughter broke out. But beneath it, truth. Afterward, I found Leo in the back corner, sprawled on the floor with markers and a pile of construction paper. He'd drawn another superhero, this one with brown hair, a wrench in one hand and a notepad in the other. "This one's you," he said proudly. "You fix stuff and you talk." I ruffled his hair. "You forgot the coffee in my other hand." He grinned. "I'll add it." A woman passing by looked at him, then at me. "He yours?" "Yeah," I said. "He called that older lady Grandma when she dropped him off," the woman added. "Is she yours?" "She is now," I said without hesitation, because Martha wasn't blood, she was bond. Leo called her Grandma like he'd always known her, like the universe had just taken a while to introduce them. And she wore the title with quiet pride, slipping him peppermints and calling him boss when he helped in the garage. Life didn't snap into perfection overnight. I still worked double shifts some weeks, still had panic attacks when I smelled desert dust on a hot day, still dreamed about the porch I walked away from, but I didn't flinch when those memories came. Because now I had something stronger than fear, a foundation. The trailer became a home, the garage became a business Rayner & Co. named not for family legacy, but for earned survival. Martha insisted on keeping the &Co, even though she said she didn't need credit. "Let people think we're big," she joked. "Big scares 'em." And I kept writing, first small blog posts, then essays, then a column. By the time I took the stage that night, I had a book deal in hand, part memoir, part guide for women building lives from rubble. But none of that compared to hearing Leo say, "I'm proud of you, Mom," without prompting. He said it the night I finished my manuscript. He said it again when I gave my first workshop. And he said it most recently when I told him the truth that families don't always love you right. That sometimes the family you build is more sacred than the one you're born into. He looked at me with those wide, knowing eyes and said, "I know, Mum. I picked mine already." The email came late past midnight, just as I was wrapping up edits on the final chapter of my manuscript. I almost didn't check it. But the subject line caught my eye, from someone who didn't understand before. It was from Camille. My cousin. I hadn't heard from her in years. She was the golden one, always perfectly dressed at family holidays, always smirking at my rebellious phases, always whispering with my mother in corners at reunions. I clicked the message with caution. "Hi Tessa, you probably don't want to hear from me, and that's fair. But I read your article, the one about mothers who aren't born but made. I didn't know what happened in the desert. I didn't know what your parents really did. I believed what they told me, that you were unstable, dramatic, selfish. But I know better now, and I just wanted to say, I wish you were my mum." I stared at the screen for a long time, the words burning into my chest. Not because I wanted her admiration, but because it confirmed something I'd never dared to believe before, that the truth always finds its way, even through the thickest denial. Camille, who once rolled her eyes at my presence, now saw me, not as broken, not as bitter, but as whole, as worthy, as strong. I thought about not responding, but silence had haunted my life long enough. So I typed, "Camille, thank you for your message. It means more than I expected it would, but I don't want anyone to wish they had my life. I don't want anyone to be like me. I want them to never need to be. I want them to grow without having to rebuild from ashes. I want them to be safe from the kind of love that comes with conditions and expiration dates. So, no, I don't want anyone to be like me. I just want fewer people to be like who I used to be, voiceless, small, erased." I hit send and closed the laptop. The next morning, Leo bounded into the kitchen, holding a cardboard cutout shaped like a trophy. "For you," he said proudly, "best real-life hero." I laughed and hugged him. "Where'd you get this?" I made it. "At school. I told the class about you, how you fix cars and help mums and write books." I blinked, touched. "What did they say?" He grinned. "They said I'm lucky." I held him tight, breathing in the scent of pencil shavings and soap. They're right. That afternoon I walked into the garage and found Martha on her back, under a rusty SUV, muttering curses at a stripped bolt. "Need a hand?" I asked. She grunted. "Need a miracle." I slid under beside her and passed her a wrench. "Leo made me a trophy," I said, smirking. Martha didn't look over. "Damn right he did. You earned it." Later that week, my book draft was approved by the publisher. The editor called it raw and redemptive. The cover design featured cracked pavement and wildflowers pushing through. It felt right, because that's what this life was. Cracked, pressured, but still blooming. And in the quiet moments when Leo was asleep and the garage was closed, I'd sit with my coffee and think about the journey, not with grief, but with awe, because I had built this, not in spite of the desert, but from it. They threw me into the dust, thinking I'd vanish, but I didn't. I planted something, and it grew. They threw me into the desert to die. I used the sand to build a life.